By Monday morning, Moonlight Falls High looked completely different. Orange paper leaves hung from the hallway ceilings. Strings of tiny lights wrapped around the lockers. A large banner stretched across the entrance to the gym. Students gathered around colorful posters before first period. Some discussed music. Others argued about decorations. Several simply wanted an excuse to stay out late. Lily stopped in front of the biggest poster and smiled.
I love this town. Ethan adjusted the stack of folded chairs he was carrying.
Because of paper leaves?
Because everyone pretends they're too old for school dances. She pointed around the hallway. And then everybody shows up anyway. Ethan looked around. She wasn't wrong. Groups of seniors laughed while pretending not to care. Freshmen nervously whispered about who might ask whom. Teachers decorated bulletin boards, as though they were trying not to enjoy themselves. You signed up? Ethan nodded.
Volunteer? Lily grinned.
I knew it. Ethan sighed.
Mrs. Carter volunteered me.
Close enough. He glanced toward the gym.
I am helping with lighting, sound, emergency exits, tables, and apparently balloons. Lily laughed.
You always become responsible by accident.
Across the hallway, Ava closed her locker. She watched students carrying boxes of decorations toward the gym. Somebody handed her a flyer. She smiled politely, then folded it and placed it inside her notebook without reading it. Lily immediately noticed.
You didn't even look. Ava shrugged.
I know what it says.
It says Autumn Dance. Ava nodded.
Exactly. Lily crossed her arms.
So, you are coming.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say no. Ava smiled.
I thought it was obvious. Lily looked toward Ethan.
Help me? Ethan considered for a second.
She is probably not coming. Lily stared at him.
Wrong side.
I prefer accurate sides. Lily ignored him. She hooked one arm through Ava's.
When was the last time you did something completely normal? Ava thought.
I ate breakfast.
That doesn't count. You've solved disappearances. You've searched forests. You've frightened half the town. You deserve one evening where nothing happens. Ava laughed quietly.
In Moonlight Falls? Lily pointed around the hallway.
I choose optimism.
Mrs. Carter appeared from the gym carrying a box of decorations.
Lily turned. We still need volunteers after school. Lily smiled.
I'll be there. Mrs. Carter looked toward Ava.
You too? Before Ava could answer.
Absolutely. Ava slowly turned toward her.
I did not say that. Lily smiled brightly.
You were about to. Mrs. Carter thanked them and disappeared back inside the gym. Ava looked at Lily.
I have never seen someone volunteer another person so confidently. Lily nodded.
It comes naturally.
By lunchtime, nearly every classroom talked about the dance. Some students worried about what to wear. Others wondered who might perform with the school band. Near the cafeteria windows, Ava found a quiet table. Lucien was not there. He rarely came onto campus during school hours unless necessary. Ava had become used to that. Still, she caught herself looking toward the entrance. Lily sat beside her carrying 2 trays.
I know that face. Ava looked up.
What face? Lily smiled knowingly.
The one where you pretend you aren't waiting for someone. Ava looked back toward the window.
I wasn't. Lily waited. Ava smiled. Maybe a little. Lily leaned closer.
So invite him. Ava blinked.
To school?
To the dance. Ava laughed.
He would say no?
You don't know that. Ava looked down at her lunch.
I know Lucien. He doesn't enjoy crowds. He doesn't like attention. He already feels like an outsider. Lily's expression softened.
Maybe. She picked up her fork. But maybe he'd come if you asked. Ava didn't answer. The thought stayed with her.
After classes ended, the gym transformed into organized chaos. Music equipment filled one corner. Students climbed ladders to hang lights. Teachers argued over table placement. Someone accidentally released a dozen orange balloons into the ceiling. Ethan stood beneath the stage holding a clipboard.
Number the speakers go there. Number those cables stay taped. Number the pumpkin belongs on the table, not the scoreboard. Lily walked past carrying another box.
You sound 40. Ethan looked up.
I feel 60. Lily placed the box beside him. Inside were paper maple leaves, glitter covered nearly everything, including Ethan's sleeves. Lily noticed immediately.
Congratulations, Ethan frowned.
On what? Lily pointed.
You sparkle. Ethan looked down. Orange glitter covered both arms. He sighed. Don't wipe it. It'll spread. He stopped moving. Too late. Now his face had glitter too. Lily burst into laughter. Even Ava couldn't help smiling. For several minutes, the gym echoed with ordinary voices. No mysteries, no hidden photographs, no old secrets. Just students preparing for a school dance. Ava realized how much she had missed that feeling. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe one evening could simply belong to the present. She wasn't sure she believed it. But for the first time in weeks, she wanted to.
The afternoon rush had finally slowed. Harbor lights smelled of fresh coffee and warm cinnamon bread. Sunlight stretched across the wooden floor through the front windows. Thomas stood behind the counter balancing receipts. Walter occupied his usual table with a newspaper that he had barely read. Every few minutes he looked over the top of it to see who came through the door. The bell rang. Walter looked up.
Ah, Lily. Lily waved.
Still guarding your corner. Walter folded one page.
Ah, I prefer observing. Lily smiled.
That is a nicer word. Walter nodded proudly.
It usually is.
Ethan followed her inside carrying 2 small boxes. He set them beside the counter.
Mrs. Carter sent these. Thomas opened one. Inside were paper lanterns.
For the dance, Ethan nodded. I thought schools bought decorations.
They buy some. We borrow the rest. Thomas smiled faintly.
That is Moonlight Falls.
A chair scraped softly across the floor. Lucien looked up from the history book resting beside his coffee. He had been sitting near the back window for nearly an hour. Lily spotted him immediately. Her eyes lit up.
There he is. Ethan quietly muttered.
I suddenly understand why we came. Lily ignored him. She marched straight toward Lucien.
We have a question. Lucien closed his book.
I have a feeling it isn't really a question.
It isn't. Lucien smiled.
I thought so. Lily pulled out the chair across from him.
Friday, 7 o'clock. School gym. Lucien looked at her calmly.
The dance.
Exactly. Lucien nodded once.
I hope everyone enjoys it. Lily waited. Lucien picked up his coffee. Nothing else happened.
And Lucien looked genuinely confused.
And what?
You are coming. Lucien set the cup back down, very gently.
I don't think so. Lily leaned forward.
Why not? Lucien answered without hesitation.
Because it isn't my place.
Lily frowned. She had expected excuses, not certainty.
You were invited. Lucien shook his head.
By you. Lily smiled.
That counts. Lucien looked toward the front windows. Outside, students walked past carrying sports bags and backpacks. They laughed loudly. One group stopped to take photographs beneath the old maple tree. Lucien watched them for several seconds, then quietly said,
Those moments belong to them. They should. Lily followed his gaze.
And Lucien's voice remained calm.
I've spent too many years living outside that kind of life. I don't want my presence to change it.
Lily didn't answer immediately. She had expected Lucien to mention vampires, or danger, or suspicion. Instead, he talked about ordinary teenagers, about belonging, about protecting something he believed he had already lost. Ethan understood before Lily did.
You are worried people will stop enjoying themselves if you walk in, Lucien nodded. Because they'll be watching you. Lucien gave a quiet smile.
They should be watching the people they came with, not me.
For a moment, no one spoke. Even Walter lowered his newspaper. Thomas continued polishing a coffee cup without interrupting. He had heard every word. Lily rested both elbows on the table.
I think you are wrong. Lucien looked at her. They're already watching you. Lucien raised one eyebrow. They've been watching you for weeks, so you staying home won't change that. She smiled, but showing up might. Lucien considered her words. He still shook his head.
I am not sure.
The bell above the entrance rang again. Ava stepped inside carrying 2 library books. She immediately noticed everyone sitting unusually quietly.
What happened? Walter answered first.
They're negotiating. Ava looked from Lily to Lucien, then back again. She smiled.
What are we negotiating? Lily pointed dramatically.
His social life. Ava laughed. I am losing. Lucien looked almost apologetic.
I am trying to explain. Ava sat beside him.
Explain what? Lucien hesitated, then answered honestly.
They invited me to the dance. Ava blinked.
Oh, Lily stared.
Oh, that is all you have, Ava smiled.
I understand why. She turned toward Lucien. You don't have to go. Lily opened her mouth, then closed it again. Lucien looked surprised.
You are not disappointed? Ava shook her head.
Number, if you don't want to be there, then you shouldn't spend the evening pretending. Lucien studied her face. There was no pressure, no disappointment, no hidden expectation, only acceptance. I'd rather have coffee with you here than watch you be uncomfortable somewhere else. Lucien lowered his eyes briefly. Something in his expression softened.
Thomas quietly carried another cup of coffee over. He placed it beside Lucien without saying anything, then walked away. Walter smiled to himself behind the newspaper. He had lived long enough to recognize certain conversations.
I still think you'd look good in a suit. Lucien almost laughed.
I haven't owned one in a very long time. Lily looked toward Thomas.
Does he own a suit? Thomas answered without looking up.
One. Lily smiled triumphantly.
See? Lucien sighed.
I don't think that is helping.
The conversation drifted toward other subjects, decorations, homework, the football game scheduled for Saturday. Lily eventually accepted temporary defeat. She and Ethan carried the boxes back outside. Before leaving, Lily stopped beside Ava.
I am not giving up. Ava smiled.
I know. After the door closed, silence settled again. Lucien watched sunlight move slowly across the wooden table. Ava opened one of her library books. Neither spoke for almost a minute. Finally, Lucien broke the silence.
If I came, Ava looked up. Lucien wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the coffee in front of him. Would you spend the first dance with me? Ava smiled gently.
I thought you weren't coming. Lucien smiled too barely.
I said I wasn't sure. Ava closed her book.
If you come, the first dance is yours. Lucien looked at her for a second. Everything else inside Harbor Light disappeared. The clatter of dishes, Walter turning another newspaper page, Thomas washing cups, even the afternoon traffic outside. Only Ava remained. She wasn't asking him to become someone else. She wasn't asking him to fit into the town. She was simply leaving a place beside her. Whether he chose to take it would be entirely his decision.
That evening, after Harbor Light closed, Lucien walked home alone. The streets were quiet. Leaves drifted across the sidewalks in the cool autumn wind. He passed the school gym. Students inside were still decorating. Music floated through the open doors. Laughter followed it. Lucien stopped across the street. He watched for several moments, not because he wanted to enter, because he wondered what it might feel like to belong somewhere again. Inside the gym, Ava climbed a ladder to hang the last string of lights. Without knowing why, she looked toward the front entrance, as though expecting someone. No one stood there. She smiled anyway. Somehow, she had a feeling Friday night had not been decided yet. Wednesday afternoon arrived with cool air and bright blue skies. The dance was only 2 days away. Every hallway conversation seemed to end with the same question. What are you wearing? Lily had an answer, 3 different answers. Actually, she carried 2 garment bags into Harbor Light before school ended. The bell above the door rang loudly.
Emergency! Thomas looked up from the counter.
Should I call the fire department?
Worse, I can't decide. Walter folded his newspaper.
I once wore the same suit to 14 dances. Lily smiled politely.
I appreciate your courage. Walter nodded.
It was beige. Lily looked horrified.
Oh! Walter smiled proudly.
It was fashionable. Ethan entered a moment later, carrying another garment bag.
I told her to pick one.
That isn't how dresses work. Ethan looked at Thomas.
I tried. Thomas simply poured another cup of coffee.
Ava arrived a few minutes later. She stopped when she saw the garment bags covering an entire booth.
I feel like I walked into a clothing store. Lily immediately stood.
Perfect. You were just in time. Before Ava could escape, Lily pushed one garment bag into her hands. Open it! Ava slowly unzipped the bag. Inside hung a dark green dress, simple, elegant. Nothing flashy.
It is beautiful.
I know. It is mine. Ava looked up. The second one. Ava laughed. She opened the other bag. A warm amber-colored dress appeared beneath the plastic cover. Soft fabric. Long sleeves. A flowing skirt. Perfect for autumn.
This one? Lily nodded.
I think so. Ethan looked over.
I voted for that one, Lily smiled.
He only gets one vote.
Ava gently touched the fabric. It reminded her of autumn leaves. Warm, comfortable, not overly formal.
So, you'll wear it? Ava hesitated.
I don't actually have anything, Lily blinked.
You just said this is beautiful. Ava smiled.
I meant I don't own a dress. Silence. Thomas looked toward Ava, then quietly walked upstairs. Nobody asked why.
Several minutes later, Thomas returned carrying a long white storage box. He placed it gently on the table. His movements became slower than usual, almost careful enough to disturb time itself. Ava looked at the box.
What is that? Thomas rested one hand on the lid for several seconds. He didn't answer finally.
It belonged to Emily. The room became quiet. Walter quietly stood. Without a word, he carried his newspaper to the opposite side of the restaurant, giving them privacy.
Thomas opened the box. Inside rested a pale blue dress, simple. Timeless, beautiful. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't covered with lace. Emily had clearly chosen it because she liked it, not because anyone expected her to wear it. Ava barely whispered.
I've never seen it. Thomas smiled faintly.
You were too young. She wore it once, the autumn dance. Lily slowly sat down. She no longer looked excited, only respectful. Thomas gently lifted the dress. The fabric still held its shape after all these years. Emily always said blue reminded her of early evening. Ava looked at the dress, then at Thomas.
You kept it, Thomas nodded.
I couldn't throw it away. Ava's eyes softened.
I wouldn't have either.
Thomas carefully handed the dress to Ava. She held it almost nervously, as though afraid memories could wrinkle.
I don't know if I should, Thomas smiled. This time, the smile reached his eyes.
I've been waiting. Ava looked up. For the day someone in this family wore it again. His voice became quieter. It shouldn't stay inside a box forever. Ava looked down at the dress. She imagined Emily laughing, walking through the same school hallways, meeting friends, dancing, living a perfectly ordinary evening, long before mysteries found her.
Do you really want me to wear it? Thomas answered without hesitation.
Very much.
Lily quietly wiped one eye. Ethan noticed. He looked away without saying anything. Giving her a moment, Lily cleared her throat.
I officially withdraw my dress. Everyone smiled, even Thomas.
Later that evening, Ava stood in front of the mirror upstairs. The dress fit surprisingly well. Thomas knocked softly on the bedroom door.
You can come in. Thomas entered. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. The blue dress caught the fading sunset outside the window. For the briefest instant, memory and reality overlapped. Not because Ava looked exactly like Emily. She didn't, but the kindness in her eyes, the quiet smile, the way she nervously smoothed the sleeves, it was familiar enough to stop time. Ava noticed his silence. Too old-fashioned? Thomas slowly shook his head. He swallowed before speaking.
Number Ava waited. Thomas smiled, a genuine smile. Warm, proud, almost relieved. She'd tell you it looks better on you. Ava laughed softly.
I don't think she'd say that. Thomas looked toward the photograph resting on the dresser. Emily smiled back from another autumn many years ago.
Number she probably wouldn't, but she'd be happy. He adjusted one sleeve gently, just as a father might before sending his daughter to her first dance. very happy.
Downstairs, Lily waited impatiently. The bedroom door finally opened. Ava walked into the hallway. Lily's eyes became enormous.
Wow! Ava looked embarrassed.
Too much? Lily immediately shook her head.
Not even close. You look, she searched for the right word, then smiled. You look like someone people remember. Ava laughed. In a good way. Ethan came up the stairs carrying a toolbox. He looked up, then stopped walking. For almost 3 seconds, Lily immediately noticed. You stopped. Ethan blinked.
I was thinking. Lily smiled. Number, you forgot how stairs work? Ethan cleared his throat. The dress looks nice. Lily folded her arms.
Very smooth. Ethan looked confused.
I was answering honestly. Lily laughed again.
Thomas watched the three of them from the bottom of the staircase. For the first time in many years, the house sounded young again. Laughter echoed through the hallway. Footsteps crossed the wooden floor. Someone argued about shoes. Someone else complained about hair, ordinary things, beautiful things. Thomas quietly looked toward Emily's old photograph. His voice was almost too soft to hear.
I think you'd approve. Outside, autumn leaves drifted slowly across the porch. Friday night was getting closer. And somewhere across town, Lucien stood in front of an old closet, looking at the only suit he still owned. He reached toward it, then stopped. His hand remained there for several seconds. The decision still hadn't been made. But for the first time, he opened the closet door.
Friday arrived wrapped in cool autumn air. By sunset, nearly every light inside Moonlight Falls High was glowing. Music drifted through the open gym doors. Students crossed the parking lot in dresses, jackets, polished shoes, and nervous smiles. Inside the gym, paper leaves hung from the ceiling like a forest frozen in midair. Strings of warm lights reflected across the polished wooden floor. Round tables circled the dance floor. Arranged lanterns glowed softly beside bowls filled with candy and caramel apples. Lily stood near the entrance wearing a dark green dress. She turned in a slow circle.
Well, Ethan looked up from checking the sound system.
It still looks green. Lily stared at him.
You have no survival instincts. Ethan smiled.
You asked the wrong person? Lily laughed.
I definitely did.
Mrs. Carter clapped her hands.
5 minutes. Everyone ready? Students answered with cheers. The school band finished tuning their instruments. The lights dimmed slightly. The gym slowly filled. Parents took photographs near the entrance. Friends gathered in groups. Laughter echoed beneath the decorated ceiling. Everything felt wonderfully ordinary.
A black pickup stopped outside the school. Thomas stepped out first. He walked around to the passenger side. Ava opened the door. The pale blue dress caught the evening light exactly the way Emily had once said it would. Thomas smiled. Not because the dress reminded him of the past, because tonight it belonged to the present. He offered his arm. Ava accepted. Together they walked toward the entrance. Several teachers smiled as they passed. Mrs. Carter waved enthusiastically.
Ava, you look beautiful. Ava smiled.
Thank you. Students turned as she entered, not because of the dress alone, because everyone knew Ava, the girl who had helped solve the town's mysteries, the girl who somehow remained humble despite all of it. Lily spotted her immediately.
There she is. She hurried across the gym, then stopped in front of Ava. For several seconds, she simply stared. Okay, I officially lose, Ava laughed.
I thought you liked your dress.
I do, but Emily clearly had excellent taste. Thomas quietly looked away. The compliment meant more than Lily realized.
Ethan joined them carrying 2 bottles of water. He stopped and looked at Ava, then at Thomas. Something about the scene felt strangely complete.
You made it? Ava smiled.
I promised, Ethan nodded, then looked toward the entrance almost unconsciously, as though checking whether someone else had arrived. Lily noticed.
Waiting for somebody? Ethan shrugged.
Just checking attendance? Lily smiled knowingly. She didn't say another word.
The first songs began. Students slowly gathered on the dance floor. Some danced confidently. Others awkwardly laughed their way through the rhythm. Ava remained near the refreshments. She watched everyone else. Thomas stood several steps away talking with teachers. Every few seconds, he looked toward Ava. Not because he worried, simply because fathers often do. Outside, another car stopped across the street. Lucien remained seated behind the wheel. The school glowed with warm light. Music drifted across the parking lot. He could already imagine the conversations inside. The curious looks, the whispers. He rested both hands on the steering wheel. For nearly a minute, he didn't move. His phone vibrated. One message. From Ava. Lucien read it twice, then smiled. A second message appeared. He looked through the windshield again. Students laughed as they entered the building. For years, he had convinced himself those doors belonged to other people. Perhaps they once had. But tonight, Simone had left one open for him. He stepped out of the car, straightened the sleeves of the charcoal gray suit Thomas had quietly delivered that afternoon without asking questions. The jacket fit almost perfectly. Lucien looked toward the school once more, then crossed the street. Inside the gym, the band finished its first song. Students applauded. Mrs. Carter announced a short break before the next dance. The entrance doors opened. Cool evening air drifted inside. Conversations slowed. One by one, students turned toward the doorway. Lucien stood quietly beneath the autumn decorations. Nothing dramatic. No grand entrance. Just a well-fitted dark suit, a calm expression, and the slight uncertainty of someone entering a room where he wasn't sure he belonged. Silence lasted barely 2 seconds. Then someone whispered,
"That is Lucien." Another student looked over.
He actually came. Several students smiled politely. One waved. Lucien returned a small nod. Nothing more, the room relaxed almost immediately. The feared moment never arrived. People simply went back to talking. Exactly as Lily had predicted.
Across the gym, Ava turned. She hadn't heard the whispers. She hadn't needed to. Somehow, she simply knew. Their eyes met across the crowded room. The noise disappeared. Neither of them moved for several heartbeats. Then Ava smiled. Not a surprise smile. Not even a relieved one. A smile that quietly said Lucien walked toward her. Slowly, without hurry. Every step seemed easier than the last. He stopped in front of her for a moment. Neither spoke. Finally, Lucien broke the silence.
I believe I am just in time. Ava looked at him from head to toe, then smiled a little wider.
You are. Lucien glanced down at the blue dress.
You look beautiful. Ava laughed softly.
I was about to say the same thing. Lucien looked down at his borrowed suit.
I am fairly certain the suit deserves most of the credit. Ava shook her head.
I don't think so. They stood smiling at one another. Around them, the gym continued exactly as before. Students laughed. Teachers talked. Music played. No one panicked. No one stared for long. Lucien slowly realized something unexpected. The evening had continued without changing because of him. For the first time in a very long while, he wasn't standing outside someone else's world. He was simply standing beside Ava. And somehow, that was enough.
Across the room, Lily quietly bumped Ethan's shoulder.
I told you. Ethan smiled.
You did? Lily folded her arms proudly.
Now don't interrupt. Ethan looked confused.
I wasn't planning to. Lily nodded.
Good. Because the next song is slow. At almost the same moment, the lights dimmed slightly. The band leader stepped to the microphone.
This next dance is for anyone still waiting. Soft piano filled the gym. Ava looked toward Lucien, then slowly extended one hand.
The piano carried the first gentle notes across the gym. Conversations became quieter. Students smiled at one another. Some immediately walked toward the dance floor. Others suddenly found the refreshments very interesting. Lucien looked at Ava. Then at the growing crowd, he hesitated. Not because he wanted to leave, because he genuinely didn't know what to do next. Ava noticed. She smiled, then extended her hand a little farther.
Would you like to dance? Lucien looked at her hand, then back at her.
I am not very good. Ava laughed softly.
Neither am I. Lucien still didn't move. That means we're evenly matched. For the first time that evening, Lucien laughed quietly. Honestly, he accepted her hand.
Together they stepped onto the dance floor. The crowd naturally shifted, giving everyone enough room. Nobody paid them special attention anymore. Exactly as Lucien had hoped, he rested one hand gently against Ava's back. She placed hers on his shoulder. Their joined hands lifted awkwardly between them. Both stood completely still. Lucien smiled.
I believe we've already reached the difficult part. Ava nodded.
I was hoping you'd know what came next. Lucien shook his head.
I was hoping exactly the same. They both laughed. The nervousness disappeared almost instantly.
They began with small, uncertain steps. Neither followed perfectly. Neither minded. The music was slow enough to forgive every mistake. Ava accidentally stepped on Lucien's shoe. She immediately looked horrified.
I am sorry. Lucien glanced down, then back up.
I've survived worse. Ava laughed again.
I should hope so, they continued, this time a little more naturally. The distance between them became comfortable, not because either of them moved closer, because neither felt the need to move away.
Across the room, Lily watched with enormous satisfaction.
Look at them. Ethan followed her gaze.
They're dancing? Lily nodded enthusiastically.
They're smiling. Ethan nodded again.
They are? Lily folded her arms.
I worked very hard for this. Ethan looked genuinely confused.
What exactly did you do? Lily thought for a moment.
I was encouraging. Ethan smiled.
I'll allow partial credit?
Thomas stood beside Mrs. Carter near the refreshments. Mrs. Carter smiled toward the dance floor.
They're a lovely couple. Thomas remained quiet for several seconds. Finally, he nodded, just once.
They are. His voice carried neither surprise nor hesitation, only acceptance.
Back on the dance floor, the song continued. Lucien looked around. Students laughed. A few couples spun too quickly and nearly collided. One boy dropped his glasses. Another apologized after stepping on someone's dress. Nothing was perfect. Everything felt real. Lucien looked back at Ava.
I expected this to be different.
Worse? Lucien considered.
Harder, Ava smiled.
Sometimes ordinary things are easier than we imagine. Lucien looked at the people surrounding them.
I forgot that.
You remembered? Lucien looked at her. You came. Silence settled comfortably between them, not empty, peaceful.
The music shifted into its second verse. Without realizing it, their movements became smoother. Ava no longer watched her feet. Lucien no longer worried about every step. Instead, they simply followed each other. Sometimes Lucien led. Sometimes Ava quietly corrected the direction. Neither noticed. Neither cared. Near the stage, Lily accepted a cup of punch from Ethan. She took one sip, then looked back toward Ava.
She looks happy. Ethan followed her eyes. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched Lily. She smiled every time Ava laughed. She celebrated every tiny moment as though it belonged to her as well. Without expecting anything in return, Ethan suddenly realized something. He had always thought of Lily as Ava's energetic friend, someone who filled every silence, someone impossible to ignore. But standing there, watching her care so completely about another person's happiness, he saw something else: kindness. The effortless kind. The kind that never asked to be noticed. Lily turned, caught him looking. What? Ethan blinked.
Nothing. Lily narrowed her eyes.
You are thinking. Ethan smiled awkwardly.
I probably am. Lily laughed.
Careful. It can become a habit.
On the dance floor, Lucien quietly spoke.
I almost stayed home. Ava looked up.
I know. Lucien seemed surprised. I also knew you were still deciding. Lucien smiled.
How? Ava shrugged.
I've started recognizing the difference. The difference between your answer and your final answer. Lucien laughed softly.
Apparently, I am becoming predictable. Ava shook her head.
Only to me. Those 3 words lingered between them. Only to me. Lucien looked into her eyes. The music seemed farther away now. The crowd faded into soft colors. For a long moment, neither spoke.
Outside the tall gym windows, the first autumn leaves drifted through the cool night air. Inside, warm light reflected across the polished floor. Samono quietly dimmed the lights another level. Everything slowed. Lucien's voice became almost a whisper.
Thank you. Ava tilted her head.
For what? Lucien looked around the room, then back at her.
For leaving a place beside you, Ava smiled. She answered just as quietly.
I didn't leave it. It was always yours if you wanted it. Lucien stopped moving. The music continued. Couples slowly danced around them. Neither of them noticed. For several heartbeats, they simply stood there, looking at one another. Closer now? Much closer. Neither stepped forward, neither stepped back. Lucien slowly lifted one hand, almost unconsciously. He gently brushed a loose strand of hair away from Ava's face. His fingertips barely touched her cheek. Ava didn't move. She simply looked at him. Her heartbeat became impossible to ignore. Lucien leaned forward only slightly. Ava did the same. The distance between them became inches. Then just one. Their eyes slowly closed. Ava. Lily's voice echoed across the gym. Both of them immediately opened their eyes. They stepped apart almost at the same time. Lily hurried toward them, completely unaware of what she had interrupted.
There you are. Ava tried very hard to sound normal.
Yes, Lily smiled. The photographer grew picture. Everybody, Lucien quietly cleared his throat.
I believe we've been recruited. Ava looked at him. For one brief second, they both smiled. The same embarrassed smile. The same unfinished moment. Neither mentioned it. Neither needed to, because both of them knew there would be another chance.
Across the gym, Thomas had seen almost everything. Not every word, not every expression, but enough. Walter appeared beside him carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Thomas.
You look relieved. Thomas accepted the cup.
I am, Walter smiled.
I thought fathers were supposed to panic. Thomas watched Ava laughing with Lily while Lucien stood quietly beside her. Then he answered.
Only when they don't trust the person standing next to their daughter. Walter followed his gaze. He nodded slowly.
Fair enough.
The photographer gathered students beneath the autumn decorations. Everyone squeezed together. Lily insisted Ethan stand beside her. Ethan insisted there wasn't enough room. Lily ignored him and pulled him into the picture anyway. Ava found herself standing beside Lucien once more. Their shoulders lightly touched. Neither moved away. The photographer raised the camera.
Everyone smile, Flash. For a fraction of a second, the entire gym became white. No one noticed. Just beyond the open gym doors, a lonely storage room hallway disappeared back into darkness. Waiting.
The applause faded. Students laughed as they stepped away from the group photograph. The band began preparing for the next song. Teachers rearranged chairs. Parents continued taking pictures near the entrance. The evening settled back into its comfortable rhythm. Lily checked the photo preview on the camera.
Ethan! Ethan leaned over.
What? Lily pointed?
You blinked. Ethan sighed.
I always blink.
I know, but it is tradition to complain. Ethan smiled.
I'll try harder next year.
Across the gym, Ava and Lucien walked toward the refreshment table. Neither mentioned what had almost happened. Not because they had forgotten, because neither wanted to rush past it. Sometimes silence protected moments better than words. Lucien picked up 2 cups of cider. He handed one to Ava.
Thank you, Lucien smiled.
You are welcome. Ava looked at him over the rim of her cup.
You are smiling more tonight? Lucien thought about it.
I suppose I am, Ava smiled.
I like it. Before Lucien could answer, a loud crash echoed somewhere beyond the gym. Everyone turned. Another sound followed. Something metallic hit the floor. Then a scream.
Someone help. The music stopped immediately. Mrs. Carter looked toward the hallway. What happened? A student ran into the gym, breathing hard, pale, terrified.
Someone's down by the storage rooms. The room exploded into motion. Teachers hurried toward the hallway. Students crowded behind them. Thomas immediately stepped forward.
Nobody runs, walk, give people room. His calm voice slowed the first wave of panic, but only slightly.
The hallway outside the storage rooms filled within seconds. One classroom door stood open, another hung half closed. Near the end of the corridor, a student lay motionless on the floor, books scattered beside him. One arm rested awkwardly across his chest. A dark stain marked the front of his white shirt. Simone whispered,
Blood. Another voice answered immediately.
I told you. Something attacked him. The whisper spread unbelievably fast. Attack, blood, hallway, night. Then one word. Vampire. No one said it loudly. No one had to. The idea traveled through the crowd by itself?
Lucien stopped walking. He heard it. So did Ava. So did Thomas. Several frightened students instinctively looked toward Lucien, not accusing, simply afraid, Lucien noticed. His expression remained calm, but he quietly stepped backward, creating distance. Almost apologetically, Thomas saw it immediately. He walked straight to Lucien's side. Without hesitation, without looking around, he simply stood there, beside him, facing everyone else.
No one says another word until we know what happened. The hallway became quieter, only breathing remained.
Ava looked from Thomas to Lucien, then toward the unconscious student. Something felt wrong, not emotionally, practically. There wasn't enough blood. Too little. Far too little. She looked at Lucien.
What do you smell? Lucien didn't answer immediately. He closed his eyes for one brief second. The hallway became silent. He inhaled once, then opened his eyes. Confusion replaced concern.
Medicine. Ava frowned.
What? Lucien took another careful breath.
Pain medication. Alcohol. No fresh bite. No blood loss. He looked toward the student again. And peppermint, Lily blinked.
Peppermint. Lucien nodded.
Cough drops. Ethan looked confused.
You are sure? Lucien answered immediately.
Yes. Ava didn't hesitate. She moved past the frightened students.
Give him room. Several students stepped aside. Thomas followed close behind. Lucien stayed where he was, not because he wanted to, because he knew moving closer right now would only frighten people again.
Ava knelt beside the unconscious student. She checked his breathing. Steady pulse, fast. But regular, no obvious wounds. The dark stain on his shirt. She touched it carefully. Sticky. She smelled it. Fruit punch, not blood. Ava looked up.
It isn't blood? The nearest student stared. It is punch. Several people looked at one another. Someone who quietly said, "Oh!"
Ethan picked up the student's backpack. Books, a calculator, a half-eaten sandwich, then a small orange prescription bottle rolled onto the floor. Ethan picked it up. His expression changed.
Ava, she looked over. Ethan read the label. Strong pain medication. Thomas took the bottle. Half the pills were missing. Too many, far too many. Ava looked back at the student. His pupils, his breathing. Everything suddenly made sense.
He overdosed, Thomas nodded.
Call an ambulance. Mrs. Carter already had her phone in hand.
They're on the way.
The hallway remained quiet. Fear slowly gave way to confusion. One student looked toward Lucien, then toward the bottle, then quietly lowered his eyes. Another student whispered.
So, it wasn't. His friend slowly shook his head.
Number.
Lucien still hadn't moved. He waited until Thomas looked back at him. Thomas gave a single nod. Only then did Lucien walk forward. He stopped several feet away, far enough that no one would feel uncomfortable, close enough to help if needed. Ava looked at him.
You were right. Lucien looked toward the unconscious student.
I was lucky. Ava smiled gently.
Number, you trusted what you knew. Lucien didn't answer, but something inside him relaxed, just a little.
Outside, the distant sound of a siren approached. Closer. Closer still. Blue and red lights reflected across the school windows. The ambulance arrived less than 4 minutes later. Paramedics hurried inside with a stretcher. One knelt beside the student. The other looked toward Thomas.
What happened? Thomas handed over the prescription bottle.
We believe accidental medication overdose. The paramedic nodded. After a quick examination, he looked up.
I think you are right. Your leaf quietly spread through the hallway, not all at once. One person at a time, like light slowly turning back on after a storm.
As the paramedics wheeled the student toward the ambulance, one younger student stopped beside Lucien. He looked nervous. Very nervous. Finally, he spoke.
I am sorry, Lucien looked at him. The boy stared at the floor. I thought he couldn't finish. Lucien smiled gently.
I know, the boy nodded once, then hurried after the others. Thomas watched the exchange. He didn't say anything, he didn't need to. Sometimes trust returned quietly, one apology at a time.
Inside the gym, the music had not yet resumed. The decorations remained beautiful. The lights still glowed warmly above the empty dance floor. Only now, everyone understood how quickly fear could create its own story, and how quickly the truth could change it. The ambulance doors closed. The flashing lights slowly disappeared beyond the school entrance. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The hallway that had been filled with panic only minutes before now felt strangely quiet. Mrs. Carter finally let out a long breath.
Everyone, it is over. The students looked at one another. Embarrassment began replacing fear. One after another, they returned toward the gym, some quietly, some avoiding eye contact.
Thomas remained where he was. He watched the last students disappear around the corner. Only then did he turn toward Lucien.
You handled that well. Lucien looked surprised.
I didn't do very much. Thomas shook his head.
You did exactly enough. You stayed calm. You didn't defend yourself. You helped us find the truth. Lucien looked toward the hallway where the ambulance had gone.
I've learned that arguing rarely changes fear. Thomas nodded.
You are right. It doesn't.
Ava walked over carrying the empty prescription bottle. The paramedics had already documented it. She handed it back to Mrs. Carter.
He'll recover, Mrs. Carter nodded with visible relief.
They said we were lucky. Ava smiled.
We were.
Lily leaned against the lockers. Only now did she realize how tightly she had been holding Ethan's sleeve. She quickly let go.
Sorry. Ethan looked at his wrinkled jacket, then smiled.
I've survived worse, Lily laughed.
Lucien already used that line. Ethan blinked.
Really? Lily nodded.
It worked for him. Ethan shrugged.
I'll borrow it?
The tension finally broke. Several nearby students laughed quietly. The hallway no longer felt dangerous, only tired, very tired. Near the gym entrance, two younger students hesitated before approaching Lucien. The first boy looked down at his shoes.
Mr. Lucien? Lucien smiled.
Yes, the boy swallowed.
I am sorry. I shouldn't have... He stopped. Unable to finish, Lucien gently rescued him.
You were frightened? The boy nodded. Lucien extended his hand. So was everyone else. After a moment's hesitation, the boy shook it. A second student quietly stepped forward.
Thank you. Lucien looked at her. You knew it wasn't an attack. Lucien smiled softly.
I only recognized the smell. The girl laughed nervously.
I guess that is useful. Lucien answered with a small grin.
Occasionally.
Across the hallway, Ava watched the conversation. She felt something changing, not dramatically. Not all at once, just enough. Trust rarely arrived in speeches. It usually arrived in moments exactly like this. Small, honest, easy to miss. Mrs. Carter clapped her hands.
Everyone. The student is stable. The doctors expect a full recovery. A ripple of relief spread through the crowd. Then she smiled. And unless anyone objects, I'd like to finish our dance. Several students immediately applauded. Some only cheered. The nervous energy finally dissolved.
As everyone returned toward the gym, Thomas slowed beside Ava. He kept his voice low.
You noticed it too, Ava nodded.
The blood? There wasn't enough, Thomas smiled.
You've learned. Ava looked toward Lucien. He was quietly helping one of the teachers move chairs back into place. No one seemed uncomfortable standing beside him anymore.
So have they? Thomas followed her gaze. For the first time that evening, he allowed himself to believe she might be right.
The gym lights brightened once again. Students reclaimed their tables. The band returned to the stage. One guitarist jokingly played a spooky movie theme. The audience immediately groaned. Laughter echoed through the room. Lily pointed dramatically.
Too soon. The guitarist raised both hands.
Fair. He switched to a cheerful tune instead. The room applauded.
Ethan finished taping down one loose electrical cable near the stage. Lily watched him work.
You know. Ethan looked up.
What?
You stayed calm. Ethan shrugged.
I saw everyone else panic, so somebody had to think, Lily smiled.
That is what I like about you. The words escaped before she realized it. She immediately looked away. Ethan froze, only for a heartbeat, then quietly smiled to himself. He didn't answer. But from that moment on, he found himself noticing Lily much more carefully. The way she encouraged strangers, the way she laughed first, the way she instinctively stood beside frightened people instead of running away. Until tonight, he had simply thought she was energetic. Now, he realized she was brave.
Across the room, Lucien returned to Ava. She handed him a fresh cup of cider.
I think you've earned another one. Lucien accepted it.
Does everyone receive cider after surviving a misunderstanding? Ava smiled. If not, they should. They laughed together. This time, no one stared. One passing student even smiled at Lucien. He smiled back without thinking. It felt surprisingly natural.
Mrs. Carter stepped back onto the stage. She tapped the microphone.
Thank you, everyone. I know tonight became more exciting than we planned. Soft laughter answered her. But I also think tonight reminded us of something important. She looked around the room. Fear tells stories. The truth takes a little longer. The gym became quiet. Then students applauded. Not loudly, but sincerely.
The bandleader leaned toward the microphone.
I think we owe everyone one more slow song. Cheers filled the gym. Lily immediately looked toward Ava, then toward Lucien. She smiled to herself quietly. She had a feeling this evening still wasn't over.
The second slow song began. This time, no one hesitated. Students returned to the dance floor laughing. The tension from earlier had finally disappeared. Even the teachers looked more relaxed. Mrs. Carter accepted a dance from the history teacher. Walter, who had somehow wandered into the gym just to check on everyone, immediately announced,
I was promised pie. Lily pointed toward the refreshment table.
Wrong building, Walter sighed dramatically.
I should have suspected. The students laughed. The last traces of fear dissolved.
Lucien looked toward the dance floor, then toward Ava. Before he could say anything, Ava quietly held out her hand again.
I believe you still owe me a dance, Lucien smiled.
I thought I'd already paid. Ava shook her head.
That was before the ambulance. This is a new evening. Lucien accepted her hand.
In that case, I'd be happy to begin again.
The music was softer this time. The crowd had thinned. Many students were talking at tables. Others stood outside enjoying the cool autumn night. The dance floor belonged to only a handful of couples. Everything felt quieter, more personal. Lucien rested one hand lightly around Ava's waist. She moved a little closer without thinking. Neither mentioned it. They danced in silence for nearly a minute. Not awkward silence, comfortable silence. The kind that only appeared when words were no longer necessary. Finally, Ava spoke.
You were right. Lucien looked down at her.
About what?
You belonged here. Lucien looked around the gym. Several students waved as they passed. He waved back, almost naturally.
I didn't expect tonight. Ava smiled.
I did? Lucien looked surprised. I knew people would see you, eventually. They just needed the chance. Lucien lowered his voice.
And you? Ava tilted her head. What did you see? She answered immediately.
The same person. You were never different.
Lucien stopped for half a beat, then gently resumed dancing. His smile became almost impossible to hide. Outside the gym, the cool evening breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves. Through the open doors came distant music. The moon had climbed above the trees surrounding the football field. Lucien looked toward it.
What? Lucien smiled.
I haven't had a normal Friday night in, he thought, then laughed quietly. I honestly can't remember. Ava followed his gaze toward the moon.
Maybe that is changing. Lucien looked back at her.
I hope so.
The song slowly ended. Applause filled the gym once again. Students drifted toward refreshments. Others stepped outside for fresh air. Ava looked toward the football field beyond the parking lot.
Want to walk? Lucien nodded.
I'd like that.
They slipped quietly through the side doors. The cool night air wrapped around them immediately. The sounds of the dance faded behind them. Crickets filled the silence. Autumn leaves rolled gently across the sidewalk. They walked without destination. Just side by side. For several minutes, neither hurried to speak. The football field lights had already been turned off. Only the path lights remained. Warm circles of light stretched across the sidewalk. Ava slowed her pace.
When I was little, I used to think high school dances were magical, Lucien smiled.
And now? Ava laughed.
They're mostly awkward, Lucien nodded.
That seems accurate. Ava looked toward him.
But I am glad I came, Lucien answered softly.
So am I.
They reached the small courtyard beside the gym. An old maple tree stood in the center. Its leaves glowed golden beneath the lights. One leaf drifted down between them. Lucien caught it without thinking. He looked at it for a second, then handed it to Ava.
A souvenir? Ava accepted it with a smile.
I'll keep it.
The breeze became a little colder. Without thinking, Ava slipped her hands into the sleeves of Emily's old dress. Lucien noticed. He quietly removed his suit jacket.
You'll get cold, Lucien smiled.
I'll survive. He placed the jacket gently over her shoulders. The sleeves were slightly too long. Ava looked up at him. Neither moved. The distance between them slowly disappeared again. Closer, closer. Lucien lifted one hand. Very gently, he tucked another loose strand of hair behind Ava's ear. This time she didn't look away. Their eyes met. Neither smiled. Neither spoke. There was nothing left to interrupt the moment. Lucien slowly leaned forward. Ava closed her eyes. Their foreheads almost touched. Ava. The voice echoed across the courtyard. Both immediately stepped apart. Lily came running through the side doors, slightly out of breath. She stopped when she saw them, looked from Ava to Lucien. Then back again, silence. 3 full seconds.
Did I interrupt something? Ava's face turned bright red.
Number Lucien answered at exactly the same time?
Yes, another silence. Lily looked at both of them, then burst into laughter.
I knew it. Ava covered her face. I knew I interrupted something. Lucien looked surprisingly amused.
I appreciate your honesty. Lily tried to stop laughing. She couldn't. Finally, she managed to speak.
I am actually here for a reason. Ava slowly lowered her hands.
I certainly hope so. Lily nodded.
Ethan needs you. The student who went to the hospital, he left some things behind. They're trying to figure out whose family should collect them. Ava immediately became serious.
Is everything okay? Lily nodded.
He is awake. The hospital called. They just need someone to identify his backpack. Lucien looked toward the school. The peaceful moment quietly ended. Not lost, only postponed. He smiled at Ava.
I suppose reality has excellent timing. Ava laughed.
It always does?
The 3 of them walked back toward the gym together. Just before reaching the doors, Ava glanced sideways. Lucien happened to look at her at exactly the same moment. Neither said anything, but both smiled. The unfinished kiss no longer felt disappointing. It felt inevitable. There would be another moment. Both of them knew it. They simply didn't know when. Behind them, the maple leaf Lucien had caught earlier lifted once more in the breeze before settling gently onto the empty sidewalk. The school gym slowly returned to normal. Students finished the last dance. Teachers stacked chairs. The band packed away their instruments. Outside, the parking lot gradually emptied beneath the quiet autumn sky. Inside the front office, however, the lights remained on. The unconscious student's backpack rested on the principal's desk. Ethan stood beside it with a clipboard. Mrs. Carter looked relieved.
The hospital just called. He'll be staying overnight for observation, but he'll be fine. Everyone quietly smiled. The evening had ended much better than it could have.
Ava entered with Lucien and Lily. Thomas followed a few steps behind. Mrs. Carter pointed toward the backpack.
His parents are driving in from another county. They asked us to gather his belongings. Ethan nodded.
I've already listed most of it. He opened the backpack. 1 notebook, 3 textbooks, a calculator, wallet, keys, phone charger, a half-finished bottle of water. Everything looked perfectly ordinary.
Lily picked up one of the notebooks.
Advanced chemistry. She smiled. I am already tired. Ethan laughed.
I believe that is the intended effect. Thomas looked toward the desk.
Anything unusual? Ethan shook his head.
Not so far.
He reached into the smallest front pocket. His fingers touched something folded. Not paper from school, older, thicker. He pulled it out. A tiny square of yellowed paper. Folded 4 times, Ethan frowned.
What is this? Ava stepped closer. The paper looked far older than anything else in the backpack. Its edges had darkened with age, almost as though it had been carried for years. Carefully.
Ethan unfolded it. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally, a single sheet lay flat across the desk. No letter, no signature, no drawing, only a series of handwritten numbers. Lily leaned closer.
Coordinates. Lucien looked down.
They appear to be. Thomas's expression changed almost immediately, only slightly. But Ava noticed. She always noticed.
You've seen them before, Thomas answered carefully.
Number. But I've seen people write locations exactly like that.
Ethan opened a mapping application on the office computer. He typed the first line. Nothing. He corrected 1 digit. Still nothing. Lucien stepped beside him.
Try west instead of east. Ethan adjusted the entry. The map refreshed. A single red marker appeared. Nobody spoke. The computer slowly zoomed inward. Roads appeared, then trees. Then an abandoned gravel road. Finally, a familiar name faded onto the screen, Old Quarry Road. Lily whispered.
The quarry. Ethan looked at Ava.
Didn't the photographs? Ava nodded slowly.
The old quarry. Lucien looked toward Thomas. Thomas had become completely still. His eyes never left the screen.
The room grew quiet. Even Mrs. Carter sensed the conversation no longer belonged to the school. She quietly gathered several folders.
I'll leave you for a minute. She stepped outside, closing the office door behind her.
Only the 5 of them remained. The glowing map filled the room with pale blue light. Ava looked again at the paper. The handwriting was uneven. Not recent. The ink had faded. She turned it over. Blank. No name. No explanation. Only the coordinates.
Why would a student have this? No one answered. Lucien studied the paper.
The folds are old. It wasn't placed in his pocket tonight. Ethan nodded.
He probably carried it for quite a while, Lily frowned.
But why? Thomas quietly sat down. He looked older than he had an hour earlier. He rubbed one hand across his forehead.
I don't know. His answer was honest, and somehow that worried Ava even more.
She looked toward the map again. The quarry lay several miles outside town, surrounded by forest. Almost forgotten. Then another memory surfaced. The developed photographs, Emily. Victor, the hidden film, the stone entrance. Everything seemed to be pulling in the same direction.
Emily? Thomas slowly looked up. She went there. Thomas remained silent. Lucien watched him carefully.
You recognized the location immediately. Thomas finally nodded, very slightly.
I did.
The room waited. Thomas spoke slowly, choosing every word.
Years ago, the quarry wasn't completely abandoned. There were still maintenance roads. A few local kids explored it. He looked toward the map. Emily was one of them. Lily quietly asked,
With Victor. Thomas shook his head immediately.
Number, not at first. Silence returned.
Ethan zoomed farther into the map. One narrow dirt road curved behind the quarry, almost hidden beneath trees. Near the edge of the screen, another landmark appeared. Moonlight Creek. Ava noticed it first.
The creek. Lucien followed her gaze. The distance between the quarry and the old stone entrance was much shorter than any of them had imagined. Not walking distance for most people, but connected enough. That is not a coincidence. Thomas quietly closed his eyes for one brief moment, then opened them again.
He stood, walked toward the window. Outside, the last students climbed into waiting cars. Parents laughed. Doors closed. Engines started. Life continued. Behind him, the office remained completely silent. Finally, Thomas spoke. Without turning around.
Emily went there once? Nobody interrupted. He continued. She came home just before sunset, covered in dust. She wouldn't tell me where she'd been. Ava listened carefully. Every word mattered. That night, she asked me something. Ava stepped closer.
What? Thomas looked out into the darkness beyond the parking lot. His reflection floated faintly in the glass.
If someone found something that frightened everyone, would you hide it? The room became perfectly still. Thomas's voice dropped even lower. I told her the truth should never stay hidden forever. He slowly turned back toward them. There was regret in his eyes. Years of it. I've wondered ever since whether that was the wrong answer.
No one spoke. The folded paper remained on the desk beside the glowing map. One forgotten coordinate. One abandoned quarry. One question that had waited years for someone to ask again. Ava carefully folded the paper along its original creases. She slipped it into a small evidence envelope, then looked toward Lucien. He understood immediately. Without a word, their next destination had already been decided. Outside, the autumn dance came to an end. Inside, a much older journey had just begun. Saturday arrived beneath a pale autumn sky. The excitement of the school dance had already begun turning into stories. Some students talked about the music. Others laughed about Ethan blinking during the class photograph. Lily insisted she looked perfect. Ethan insisted no one was looking at her. Lily reminded him that everyone always looked at her. Their argument had already become the unofficial joke of the weekend. But inside Thomas's house, no one was thinking about the dance anymore. The folded paper lay in the middle of the kitchen table. Beside it rested a printed satellite map. A red circle marked a single location. Old Quarry Road, Moonlight Creek. The distance between them was less than 2 miles. Too close. Far too close.
I barely slept. Thomas looked up from his coffee.
I didn't either. Lucien stood quietly beside the window. He had spent most of the morning watching the woods behind the house, listening nothing unusual. Birds, wind. The creek in the distance. Ordinary sounds. Yet, the folded paper continued pulling his attention back.
Lily hurried downstairs carrying a backpack almost as large as herself.
I am ready. Thomas looked at the backpack.
For what? Lily proudly opened it. Flashlights, first aid kit, water bottles, granola bars, extra batteries, rope, even sunscreen. Thomas blinked. We're visiting a quarry, not climbing Mount Everest. Lily smiled.
I prefer being overprepared. Ethan arrived at exactly that moment carrying 1 bottle of water. Lily looked at him, then at his tiny backpack. That is it, Ethan shrugged.
I packed confidence. Lucien quietly laughed. Even Thomas smiled. The tension eased just enough.
Thomas spread the satellite map across the table. He pointed toward the red marker.
We stay together. No one wanders off. If anything feels unsafe, we leave. Everyone nodded. Lucien spoke for the first time that morning.
We're not looking for danger, we're looking for answers. Thomas looked at him.
Exactly.
Ava unfolded the yellowed paper again. The handwriting still bothered her. It looked rushed, uneven, as though someone had copied the numbers instead of writing them from memory. She compared the coordinates to the printed map. Perfect match. Someone had wanted this exact location remembered. But why? And why hide it inside a student's backpack? Questions multiplied faster than answers. Thomas rolled up the map. He picked up his truck keys.
Let's go. Outside, cool autumn air filled the driveway. Golden leaves drifted across the quiet neighborhood. Nothing suggested the day would become anything more than an ordinary Saturday. Yet all 5 of them felt it. The strange certainty that once they reached the quarry, something long forgotten would finally begin making sense. As Lucien closed the passenger door, he glanced toward Moonlight Creek in the distance. The old stone entrance remained hidden somewhere beyond the trees, silent, waiting, not threatening. Simply waiting. He couldn't explain why, but he had the unmistakable feeling. Whatever Emily had discovered years ago, it had been waiting for them all along.
Thomas's truck left the paved road just after 10 o'clock. The tires rolled onto a narrow gravel path hidden between rows of aging oak trees. Branches stretched overhead, filtering the morning sunlight into scattered patches across the road. No one spoke for several minutes. The folded map rested on Ava's lap. The handwritten coordinates remained circled in red. They were getting close. Very close. Old Quarry Road had clearly seen better days. Grass pushed through broken gravel. Small saplings had begun growing along the shoulders. Nature was quietly reclaiming the road. Yet, something didn't feel abandoned. Lucien noticed it first. He lowered the passenger window. Cool autumn air drifted inside. He closed his eyes for only a moment, listening. Breathing. The forest spoke in familiar sounds, wind, birds, dry leaves brushing against one another. Then something else, almost hidden beneath everything. Lucien opened his eyes.
Someone has been here. Thomas slowed the truck.
Recently? Lucien nodded.
Within a few days, Lily looked around through the window.
I don't see anyone. Lucien smiled faintly.
I don't either, but I can smell fresh engine oil and rubber. Ethan immediately leaned toward the windshield.
If someone drove in, there should be tracks?
200 yards later, Thomas stopped the truck. Everyone climbed out. The air was cool and remarkably still. Before them stretched the abandoned quarry. Massive gray stone walls surrounded a wide open clearing. Wild grass covered much of the ground. Small trees had rooted themselves between broken slabs of rock. Everything was quiet, not frightening. Simply forgotten. The quarry looked less like a place people feared, and more like a place people had slowly stopped remembering. Lily slowly turned in a circle.
It is bigger than I imagined. Thomas nodded.
It always felt enormous. When I was young, people still talked about working here. His voice carried a distant nostalgia, not fear, just time.
Ethan crouched beside the gravel road, his attention fixed on the ground. After several seconds, he smiled.
Lucien was right. Everyone walked over. Fresh tire marks crossed the old gravel, not perfectly clear, but unmistakable. One vehicle, probably an SUV. Thomas looked toward Lucien.
Good catch. Lucien simply shrugged.
I was fortunate. Ethan shook his head.
Number, you noticed something the rest of us couldn't?
Nearby, another set of marks caught Ethan's attention: footprints. The morning dew had preserved them surprisingly well. Not many. Only 2 distinct patterns. One larger. One smaller. Ethan studied them carefully.
At least 2 people? They walked in, he followed the prints several yards, then looked back, but only 1 set returned. Silence settled over the group. Lily immediately frowned.
That is not comforting. Thomas stepped closer. He examined the impressions himself. After another moment, he quietly pointed farther ahead.
Look. A second trail eventually appeared. The missing footprints hadn't vanished. They simply returned using a different route. Lily let out a relieved breath.
Okay, that is much better. Ethan laughed.
I was hoping you'd wait for the complete investigation. Lily crossed her arms.
I was busy imagining horror movies. Lucien smiled.
This isn't one. Lily nodded.
Good. I don't like horror movies.
Ava unfolded the coordinate sheet. She compared the compass application on her phone with the printed satellite image. The center of the quarry didn't match. She walked several steps toward the eastern side. Stopped, checked again, still not right. Then she noticed something.
The coordinates don't point to the quarry. Everyone looked up. She pointed beyond the open clearing, toward a narrow trail disappearing into the trees. They point over there. Lucien followed her gaze. The trail curved gently downhill toward Moonlight Creek, exactly as the satellite image suggested. Thomas slowly nodded.
Emily never mentioned the quarry itself, only the woods nearby.
They followed the trail together. Leaves crunched softly beneath their shoes. The forest became denser. Sunlight filtered through tall branches overhead. Several minutes passed. Then Lily suddenly stopped.
Wait! Everyone turned and toward the trunk of an old maple tree. At first, no one saw anything. Then Ava stepped closer. The bark had grown over several shallow cuts, almost hiding them. Somebody had carved a small symbol many years earlier. A simple crescent moon. The sided, tiny star. Ava stared. She had seen it before. Not here. In a photograph.
The picture. Lucien stepped beside her. The one in Emily's box. Ava nodded. The tree behind her. The same carving. Thomas slowly placed one hand against the old trunk. His fingers traced the weathered symbol for a long moment. He said nothing. Finally, he smiled sadly.
Emily made this. Lily looked surprised.
You know that. Thomas nodded.
She carved little stars on everything. Trees, school notebooks, the old fence behind the house. It drove me crazy. He laughed quietly. The memory was warm, gentle. Not painful, just mist.
The trail continued downhill. Soon the sound of flowing water reached them. Moonlight Creek. Its clear water reflected the bright morning sky as it wound through smooth stone banks. Everything appeared peaceful, beautiful, ordinary. Ava checked the coordinates once again. Only a few yards remained. She walked slowly, stopped, looked around. Confusion crossed her face.
This should be it. Ethan scanned the clearing. Nothing, only moss-covered rocks, fallen branches. A weathered stone wall left from the quarry's earliest days. Lily tilted her head.
Maybe we're standing on it. Lucien remained completely still, his attention fixed on something beyond the others. A large boulder rested against the hillside, half hidden beneath thick vines. It looked no different from dozens of other rocks nearby. Except the air around it smelled different. Older stone. Fresh earth. Someone had disturbed the ground recently. Lucien slowly walked toward it, without speaking. Everyone instinctively followed. He stopped only a few feet away. One hand rested gently against the cold surface of the stone. Then he looked back at the others. His voice was calm, certain.
Something is behind this.
The morning breeze stirred the vines. One loose strand slipped away from the rock. For the briefest instant, a narrow line appeared beneath the stone. Too straight, too smooth, to be natural. No one moved. No one spoke. The forgotten quarry had just revealed its first secret. For several long moments, no one moved. The enormous boulder stood quietly against the hillside. Thick ivy covered most of its surface. At first glance, it looked exactly like every other rock surrounding Moonlight Creek. Only now, everyone noticed the straight edge hidden beneath the vines. Nature rarely carved perfect lines. Thomas stepped closer. He brushed away another handful of ivy. More smooth stone appeared. Then, a narrow gap, only an inch wide. Just enough to prove the rock wasn't part of the hillside at all. It had been placed there.
Someone hid it. Thomas nodded slowly.
And wanted it to stay hidden.
Ethan knelt beside the base of the boulder. The ground wasn't solid bedrock. Loose gravel filled the edges. He picked up a broken branch and gently scraped away several inches of leaves. Fresh soil appeared beneath them, much fresher than the surrounding earth.
This was disturbed recently. Lucien crouched beside him. He touched the soil with 2 fingers, still slightly damp beneath the surface.
Not from the rain. Someone dug here. Lily looked from one face to another.
So, someone already found this place. Nobody answered, because everyone had asked themselves the same question.
Thomas carefully examined the side of the stone. His fingertips stopped near waist height. A shallow iron ring rested almost completely hidden beneath ivy. Rust covered most of it, yet it remained intact. Thomas looked back at the others.
I think this is the handle. Ethan stepped beside him.
Together they pulled. Nothing happened. The stone didn't move. Not even slightly. Ethan laughed.
Well, it was worth trying. Lucien quietly walked around the opposite side. His eyes followed the uneven ground surrounding the boulder. He stopped, looked down, smiled faintly.
Try pushing. Thomas looked puzzled.
Pushing? Lucien nodded.
The hinge is underneath this side. Everyone stared. Lucien pointed toward several weathered metal brackets nearly buried beneath moss. It opens like a door.
Thomas placed both hands against the stone. Ethan joined him. This time they pushed. At first, nothing. Then a deep grinding sound echoed through the trees. Stone shifted against stone. Leaves fell from the vines. Slowly, very slowly, the massive boulder rotated inward. Cool air drifted from the darkness behind it, not stale, not unpleasant. Simply cool. Lily's eyes widened.
That is incredibly clever. Thomas nodded.
It was built, not discovered.
Behind the hidden entrance lay a narrow passage. Sunlight reached only the first several feet. Beyond that, the tunnel curved gently underground. Stone walls lined both sides. Someone had shaped them decades ago. Perhaps longer. Lucien stepped to the entrance. He closed his eyes briefly, listening. Nothing, no footsteps, no voices. Only distant dripping water. He opened his eyes.
We're alone. Thomas reached into Lily's oversized backpack. He removed 2 flashlights, then smiled.
I owe you an apology. Lily folded her arms proudly.
I accept. And you are welcome.
The flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Dust floated lazily in the cool air. The floor remained surprisingly clean. Not polished, simply maintained. Almost no fallen rocks blocked the passage. Someone who, at some point, had cared for this place. Ava slowly stepped inside. The tunnel ceiling was high enough to walk comfortably. The walls felt smooth beneath her fingertips. Not naturally smooth, carefully carved. She stopped after only a few steps.
Look, everyone raised their lights. Small symbols appeared along the left wall, simple arrows, hand-carved, each pointed deeper into the tunnel. Lily smiled.
Emily! Thomas studied the markings. After a long pause, he shook his head.
Number. These are much older. Lucien ran one hand lightly across the stone. The edges had softened with age. Hundreds of tiny scratches surrounded each arrow. Generations of weather. Generations of hands.
They've been here a very long time.
They continued walking. The tunnel curved gently downward. Occasionally, another carved arrow appeared, always pointing forward, never backward. Almost as if whoever created them assumed no one who entered would need directions to leave. The thought made Ethan uneasy. He looked over his shoulder. Sunlight still reached the entrance, barely.
I suddenly understand why movies always tell people not to explore places like this. Lily smiled.
And yet, you are still walking, Ethan sighed.
I noticed.
Several minutes later, the tunnel widened unexpectedly. A small chamber opened before them. Sunlight filtered through narrow cracks high above. Thin beams illuminated the stone floor. Wild vines reached down from the ceiling. Nature and craftsmanship met peacefully here. At the center stood a weathered wooden post. Nothing else, just one post. Ava approached carefully. Something had been nailed to it years ago. Only the rusted nails remained. Then she noticed another carving, much smaller, newer than the arrows. She brushed away dust. A tiny crescent moon, Beside it, a star, exactly like the one carved into the maple tree. Thomas smiled immediately.
Emily, this time he was certain.
Ava crouched beside the post. Someone had scratched a few words into the wood. The letters had faded badly. She traced them carefully, then slowly read them aloud.
If you found this, keep following the light. Silence filled the chamber. Lily looked toward the narrow beam of sunlight falling across the floor.
She left directions. Thomas nodded. His voice became quiet, almost proud.
She wanted someone to find this. Lucien looked deeper into the darkness beyond the chamber. Another passage waited on the opposite side, hidden behind hanging vines, almost invisible. He smiled softly.
I don't think Emily intended this room to be the destination. He raised his flashlight. Its beam disappeared into the second tunnel, long silent.
Ava folded the map and slipped it back into her backpack. For the first time since finding the mysterious coordinates, she no longer felt they were chasing Emily's past. Instead, she felt as though Emily herself was quietly leading them forward step by step, marker by marker, toward something she had hoped Simone would eventually understand. The second tunnel narrowed almost immediately. The stone walls pressed closer together. The ceiling dipped lower. Their footsteps echoed softly through the passage. No one hurried. Every few yards, Thomas stopped to study the walls. Every few yards, Ava checked the map. Every few yards, Lucien paused, simply listening. Nothing disturbed the silence except distant dripping water. The tunnel gradually turned to the left, then to the right. The floor became smoother, almost worn, not by machinery, by people, many people, long ago. Ethan shined his flashlight downward.
These aren't natural paths? Thomas nodded.
They've been walked for years. Lucien ran his hand across the stone. Tiny grooves covered the wall, barely visible, as though countless hands had brushed the same place while passing.
This wasn't a hiding place, it was a passage.
Ava looked ahead. The tunnel suddenly widened again. Warm sunlight filtered through several narrow cracks high above. The chamber beyond glowed with soft golden light. It felt surprisingly peaceful. Nothing about it suggested danger. Only history. They stepped inside together. The chamber was almost circular, perhaps 30 feet across. The ceiling rose much higher here. Tree roots reached through cracks overhead. Wildflowers somehow grew in patches of sunlight near one wall. Nature had quietly reclaimed the forgotten room. Yet someone had once cared deeply about this place. Stone benches lined the walls. A shallow spring emerged from solid rock before disappearing beneath the floor. Crystal clear water reflected the light onto the ceiling. Lily slowly turned in a circle.
It is beautiful. Thomas smiled faintly.
I wasn't expecting that.
Near the center stood a large flat stone. Not an altar, not a monument. Simply a carefully shaped table carved from the surrounding rock. Dust covered its surface. But only lightly. Ava frowned.
Someone cleaned this. Ethan stepped beside her. He gently brushed one corner with his sleeve. The dust was thinner there, fresh, recent.
Not long ago? Thomas looked toward Lucien. Lucien quietly nodded.
I smell fresh candle wax. Everyone looked around. There were no candles. Only several shallow stone holders carved into the walls. One still contained melted white wax. A finger touched it. Soft. Not completely hardened. Thomas looked surprised.
Someone was here, recently.
Silence returned. The realization settled over everyone. Emily had not been the last visitor. Someone else still knew about this place. Someone who had returned, recently. Ava slowly circled the stone table. Her flashlight swept across its edge. Something caught the light. She leaned closer. Letters. Very faint. Hand-carved. Years of dust nearly hid them. She brushed carefully with her fingertips. More letters appeared. One line. Then another. Thomas stepped beside her. Together they slowly read the words.
Some truths, Thomas continued.
Should wait. Lucien finished quietly.
Until fear is gone. The chamber became completely silent. Lily looked confused.
What does that mean? Thomas didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rested one hand against the stone. His expression softened.
It sounds like Emily. Ava looked at him.
You think she carved it? Thomas shook his head.
Number. I think she copied it.
Lucien slowly walked toward the opposite wall. His flashlight settled on several small marks carved into the stone. Not words. Lines. Short. Vertical, grouped together. Almost like someone keeping count. Ethan joined him.
Tally marks? Lucien nodded.
I think so. There were dozens, perhaps more, some old, some noticeably newer, no dates, no names. Only quiet records left behind by unknown visitors. Lily counted several groups before giving up.
I have absolutely no idea what they were counting. Thomas looked thoughtfully at the wall.
Neither do I.
Near the spring, Ava noticed something reflecting beneath the clear water. She knelt, reached carefully into the shallow pool. Her fingers closed around smooth metal. She lifted it into the light. An old silver key, small, elegant. Its bow had been shaped into a crescent moon. Lily's eyes widened.
That definitely belongs in a mystery. Ava smiled. It probably does. Thomas examined the key. No rust, only light tarnish. Someone had taken care of it, almost lovingly. He turned it over. One tiny letter had been engraved near the base. Ava whispered.
Emily? Thomas slowly shook his head.
Maybe, or maybe, someone wanted us to think that. Lucien studied the key, then quietly looked around the chamber again.
If this key was meant to be found, the lock can't be far away.
The group spread through the chamber, searching carefully. No one rushed. Every stone received attention, every wall, every crack. Minutes passed, then Lily called out.
I found something. Everyone hurried over. She stood beside one of the stone benches. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until she moved a loose vine aside. A narrow wooden door had been built directly into the rock, so perfectly fitted that it disappeared beneath moss. Only a small keyhole remained visible. Thomas looked from the door to the silver key still resting in Ava's hand. No one spoke. The answer was obvious. Ava slowly stepped forward. The key felt surprisingly warm in her fingers. She looked once at Lucien. He nodded. Just once. She carefully inserted the key into the ancient lock. It fit perfectly.
The old key rested quietly in the lock. No one breathed. Ava wrapped both hands around the cool metal, very gently. She turned it. A soft click echoed through the chamber, not loud, not dramatic, simply certain. The lock had waited years for that sound. Nothing happened. Lily blinked.
That is it. Ethan smiled.
Try the handle. Ava nodded. She slowly pulled. The narrow wooden door resisted for only a moment. Then it opened inward with a low creak. Cool air drifted from the darkness beyond. Lucien immediately noticed something different. Not danger paper, old wood, faint traces of candle smoke. Simone had spent time inside long ago.
Thomas raised his flashlight. The beam illuminated a small room. Unlike the tunnels, this space had clearly been arranged by human hands. Shells had been carved directly into the surrounding stone. A simple wooden desk stood against one wall. Beside it rested a weathered chair. Everything wore a thin layer of dust. Undisturbed. Peaceful. Almost as though someone had simply stepped outside and never returned.
It looks like a study. Thomas slowly nodded.
It does.
The group entered carefully. No one touched anything at first. The room itself felt strangely respectful. Not sacred. Personal. Ava approached the desk. An old oil lamp rested in one corner. Beside it sat several empty glass bottles. A wooden pencil, completely worn down. A folded wool blanket still covered the back of the chair. Thomas gently touched it. The fabric crumbled slightly beneath his fingers. Time had finally caught it. Ethan examined the shelves. Most were empty. Only dust remained. Until near the top shelf, he noticed a small wooden box, plain, unlocked. He carefully lifted it down.
Should we? Thomas looked around the room, then nodded.
We came here to understand. Ethan slowly opened the lid. Inside, there was only one object, an old leather-bound notebook. Its cover had faded almost to gray. No title, no decoration, only one handwritten name inside the front cover. Victor Blackwood. Silence filled the room. Lily whispered.
Victor! Lucien stared at the notebook. He didn't reach for it. He simply looked, as though seeing the name made the room suddenly much older, much heavier.
Thomas carefully lifted the notebook. The leather cracked softly as he opened the first page. The handwriting was elegant, precise. The ink had faded, but remained perfectly readable. Thomas read aloud.
If someone is reading this, then Emily was right. Everyone looked up. Thomas continued. Secrets cannot remain buried forever. The room became completely still. Thomas slowly turned the page. The second page contained only a date, October, 24 years earlier. Ava quietly counted. That was only months before Emily disappeared.
Thomas continued reading. His voice remained steady.
Emily asked me why this place exists. I told her the truth. It was never built to hide monsters. It was built to protect ordinary people from fear. Lily frowned.
I don't understand. Lucien quietly answered.
People fear what they don't understand. Thomas looked toward him. Lucien nodded once. Thomas continued reading.
Fear spreads faster than truth. Always, by the time truth arrives. Fear has already made its own story. Ava lowered her eyes. Mrs. Carter's words from the previous night echoed in her memory. Fear tells stories. The truth takes a little longer. She finally understood. Emily hadn't invented that idea. She had learned it here.
Thomas turned another page. Most of it contained observations. Weather, water levels, maintenance notes, simple records. Nothing mysterious, nothing supernatural. Then, unfolded page slipped free and landed softly on the desk. Ava picked it up. Unlike the notebook, this page wasn't written by Victor. She recognized the handwriting immediately, Emily. Her letters leaned slightly to the right. Quick, energetic. Almost impossible to mistake. Thomas looked at it. His hands trembled. Only a little.
Should I read it? Thomas closed his eyes briefly, then nodded.
Please?
Ava carefully unfolded the paper. The ink had faded. But every word remained. She began reading.
Victor says every story becomes dangerous when people stop asking questions. He says fear always chooses the easiest answer. I don't want that to happen here. If anything ever happens to me, don't blame someone because they're different. Find the truth first. Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Ava continued. If you are reading this, it means someone finally kept looking. I knew someone would. The final line was written much smaller, almost squeezed into the bottom corner. Thank you.
Thomas quietly sat down. For several long moments, he couldn't speak. Lucien looked toward the doorway, then back toward Thomas. He finally understood why Thomas had trusted him from the very beginning. Not because Thomas had never been afraid. Because Emily had asked him not to judge people through fear. And Thomas had chosen to keep that promise, even after losing her. Lily quietly wiped one eye. She smiled awkwardly.
I wasn't planning to cry today. Ethan handed her a clean handkerchief. Without saying a word, she accepted it. Thanks. Ethan smiled.
You are welcome.
Lucien walked slowly around the room once more. His attention stopped at the back wall. One framed photograph hung there. Dust covered the glass. He carefully wiped it clean. Everyone gathered beside him. The photograph showed 3 people standing outside the quarry entrance. Victor, Emily, and a third person, only half visible. Their face had been deliberately cut away from the photograph, not torn by accident. Carefully removed, Thomas stared.
Do you recognize them? Thomas slowly shook his head.
Number Lucien looked closely at the missing section. The cut had been made with extraordinary precision. Whoever removed that face wanted the person forgotten, but not the photograph itself. The mystery had just become deeper.
No one spoke. The damaged photograph remained on the stone wall. Victor smiled quietly into the camera. Emily stood beside him, her hands tucked into the pockets of her jacket. Where the third person should have been, there was only empty space. A careful cut, deliberate, precise. Someone had wanted that face erased, but not the memory. Thomas slowly lowered the photograph. His attention returned to Victor's notebook. He gently turned another page. Then another, most contained observations, simple entries, dates, weather, repairs to the underground passage. Nothing extraordinary. Until something thicker appeared between 2 pages. Victor had glued a small envelope inside the notebook. Its paper had yellowed with age. Across the front, written in Victor's neat handwriting, were only 4 words. Thomas stared at the envelope. His voice became almost a whisper.
He never gave it to her. Ava carefully loosened the brittle flap. The glue had nearly dissolved with time. Inside there was no letter, only a tiny cassette tape. Lily blinked.
A cassette, Ethan laughed quietly.
I haven't seen one of those in years. Lucien gently turned it over. A small handwritten label covered one side. Silence returned.
Thomas slowly smiled. A sad smile, but not a hopeless one.
Emily always carried a recorder. Lily looked surprised.
For school. Thomas shook his head.
For everything. When she found something interesting, she recorded it. Ava looked down at the tape. If you ever need this. It didn't sound like a farewell. It sounded like preparation, as though Victor had expected questions.
Ethan looked around the room, then toward an old wooden cabinet standing beside the desk. Most of its drawers were slightly open. Only one remained completely closed. He pulled gently. At first, nothing. Then the drawer slid free. Inside rested a small portable cassette recorder. Gray plastic, dusty, but intact. Lily laughed in disbelief.
Okay, that is actually incredible. Thomas carefully picked it up. He opened the battery compartment. 2 old batteries rested inside, corroded, dead.
Those definitely won't work. Lily immediately opened her oversized backpack. Everyone looked at her. She looked back.
What? Thomas smiled.
You don't happen to have batteries too? Lily proudly reached inside. 2 AA batteries, still sealed.
You planned this? Lily shrugged.
I packed confidence in batteries. Ethan laughed.
Remind me never to underestimate you again.
Several moments later, the recorder clicked to life. A tiny green light appeared. Everyone instinctively moved closer. Thomas gently inserted the cassette. He hesitated. His thumb rested above the play button. No one rushed him. Finally, he pressed it. The tape began turning. Static filled the room, soft, ancient. Then a familiar young voice, Emily. Clear despite the years.
If you are listening, Victor was right. I knew someone would eventually come here. Thomas slowly closed his eyes, hearing her voice again after so many years. Nearly took his breath away.
Emily laughed softly. The same laugh Ava remembered from old family videos. Warm, curious. Always full of life.
Victor says I talk too much. I told him that is because he writes too slowly. A second voice quietly answered, older, calm Victor.
That statement has now been preserved for history. Emily laughed again.
Good. I stand by it. Even Thomas smiled. For just a moment, it felt as though the room itself had become younger.
The recording continued. Emily's tone gradually became more serious.
We've been mapping the old tunnels, not because they're mysterious, but because people keep inventing stories about them. Victor answered quietly.
Fear dislikes empty spaces. It fills them, Emily continued.
So we're leaving maps and notes and recordings, so maybe someday people won't have to guess. Ava slowly looked around the chamber, the carved arrows, the markings, the notebook, the hidden room. It all fit together. They hadn't been hiding secrets. They had been preserving truth.
The tape crackled. For several seconds, only footsteps echoed through the recording. Then Emily spoke again. more quietly this time.
If anything happens, I hope Dad remembers something. Thomas looked up, his eyes filled with emotion. I hope he remembers that being afraid doesn't make someone right. The room remained perfectly silent, Emily continued. And if Ava ever grows up enough to understand this, Thomas smiled through damp eyes. Emily laughed softly on the recording. Tell her she asks excellent questions and that she should never stop. Ava lowered her head. She could no longer hide the tears in her eyes.
Near the end of the recording, Victor spoke once more. Calm, patient, certain.
The truth is rarely hidden by darkness. It is usually hidden by assumptions. Emily answered almost immediately.
So we leave clues, Victor laughed quietly.
So we leave clues. The tape reached its final moments. Static slowly returned. Then Emily's last sentence, barely above a whisper.
If you are here, you are closer than you think. Click. The cassette stopped. No one moved, no one reached for the recorder. The silence afterward felt almost sacred, not because the recording was over, because Emily had somehow joined them again. Across 24 years.
Lucien finally broke the silence. He looked around the hidden room one more time, then toward the open doorway leading back into the tunnel.
She wasn't telling us to look backward. Everyone looked at him. Lucien smiled gently. She was pointing us forward. Thomas slowly nodded. He finally understood. Emily hadn't left behind memories. She had left behind directions, and somewhere beyond this room, one final clue was still waiting.
The recorder remained silent. Thomas gently pressed the stop button. The tiny machine clicked once. Then everything became quiet again. No one reached for Victor's notebook. No one spoke. Emily's final words still lingered in the room. Closer to what? Ava slowly looked around the chamber again. This time, she wasn't searching for hidden objects. She was searching the way Emily would have, patiently, curiously. Without assuming the answer, she walked back to the large stone table, ran her fingertips across its surface once more. Nothing. She remembered Victor's notebook. She opened it again. The final written pages contained only routine notes. Water levels, repairs, weather. Then, one page had been folded differently from all the others, not tucked away, simply folded in half, waiting.
I think I found something. Everyone gathered beside her. She carefully unfolded the page. There was only one sentence, written in Victor's unmistakable handwriting. Lily frowned.
I don't understand. Neither did anyone else.
Thomas quietly repeated the sentence.
The first question. He looked around the room, then toward the recorder, then toward the entrance. Finally, his eyes stopped at the wooden desk. The simple desk Victor had used for years. Thomas slowly walked over. His hand rested on its worn surface. He smiled faintly. The first time Emily came here, she sat right here. Everyone watched him. Thomas's memories returned one piece at a time. She looked at Victor and asked him why anyone would hide a place like this. He looked down at the desk. That was her first question.
Lucien stepped beside him. The desk appeared ordinary. One drawer, one shelf underneath. Nothing unusual. Lucien gently pulled open the drawer. Empty, except one loose wooden panel at the very back. He tapped it lightly. The sound changed immediately. Hollow.
There is a space behind it? Thomas carefully pressed along the edge. The panel slid sideways with almost no resistance. A tiny compartment appeared. Inside rested only one object, a sealed envelope, fresh compared with everything else. Protected from moisture. Its paper had yellowed only slightly. Across the front two names, Thomas froze. His hands trembled.
It is for us. Thomas nodded silently. For several seconds, he couldn't bring himself to touch it. Lucien gently placed a hand on his shoulder, not urging him, simply standing beside him. Thomas took a slow breath, then carefully lifted the envelope. It felt surprisingly light.
He opened it with extraordinary care. Inside, a single folded letter. and one pressed maple leaf. Its golden color had faded, but it remained perfectly preserved. Thomas smiled through tears.
Emily always collected leaves. Ava looked at the pressed maple leaf, then remembered. The leaf Lucien had caught outside the dance. She quietly slipped one hand into her jacket pocket. Emily's maple leaf from the previous evening was still there. Somehow, the coincidence made her smile.
Thomas unfolded the letter. His voice became unsteady. But he read anyway.
Dad, if you are reading this, then somebody finally refused to stop asking questions. A quiet laugh escaped him. That sounded exactly like Emily, he continued. I am sorry I couldn't explain everything. I wanted to. But sometimes people only hear fear. They don't hear answers. Thomas paused. Lucien quietly waited. So did everyone else. You always taught me, tell the truth kindly. I am still trying. Another pause. His voice softened. If Ava is with you, please don't let her grow up afraid of people she doesn't understand. Ava lowered her eyes. Thomas's voice almost broke. Let her meet them. Listen first. Decide later. Promise me. Silence. No one interrupted. Thomas folded the letter against his chest. Very gently, he looked toward Ava, then toward Lucien. Finally, he smiled. A real smile. The first completely peaceful smile anyone had seen from him all day. I can keep that promise.
Lucien quietly looked away. Not because he wished to hide his emotions, because he suddenly understood. Emily had already accepted him, years before they had ever met, through a promise, through hope, through simple trust. Lily quietly wiped another tear from her face. Ethan handed her the same handkerchief again. Without asking, Lily accepted it.
I really wasn't planning on crying twice. Ethan smiled.
I packed confidence? Lily laughed through her tears?
And I packed tissues. She opened another pocket in her backpack. 3 unopened travel packs appeared. Ethan stared.
Do you carry everything? Lily thought for a second.
Almost. The room filled with gentle laughter, exactly the kind Emily would probably have wanted.
Thomas carefully returned the letter to its envelope. Not to hide it, but to protect it. He placed Victor's notebook beside it, then looked once around the quiet room, the stone walls, the desk, the recorder, the hidden compartment. For 24 years, this place had guarded memories. Now its purpose had finally been fulfilled. Lucien looked toward the tunnel leading outside. Soft daylight waited beyond it. He smiled.
I think Emily would tell us not to stay underground too long. Ava smiled back.
She probably would. Together, they turned toward the entrance, leaving nothing disturbed behind them, except the promise that would never again be hidden.
The afternoon sun hung low above the trees as the 5 of them stepped out of the hidden passage. Thomas carefully pulled the stone door closed. The massive boulder slowly settled back into place. The vine slipped naturally across its surface. Within moments, the entrance disappeared once again. Unless someone knew exactly where to look, it simply became another hillside beside Moonlight Creek. Thomas rested one hand against the stone. Quietly, almost like saying goodbye.
You kept your promise. No one asked whether he meant Victor or Emily. Perhaps he meant both.
The walk back through the woods felt different. The trail no longer seemed mysterious. The carved moon and star on the old maple tree greeted them like an old friend. Lily stopped beside it one last time. She gently touched the faded carving.
I think we should leave it. Ava nodded.
It belongs here, Lucien smiled.
So do the memories. They continued toward the quarry.
When they reached the open clearing, Ethan suddenly crouched beside the gravel road again. Everyone looked back.
What now? Ethan pointed toward the tire tracks they had noticed earlier. Something had changed. Fresh footprints crossed over them. Only one pair. The prints hadn't been there that morning. Thomas immediately looked around the quarry. The clearing remained empty. No movement. No vehicles. Only wind brushing through the tall grass.
Someone came while we were underground? Silence followed. Lucien slowly closed his eyes. The scent lingered faintly in the breeze. Fresh engine oil, leather, pine soap, nothing else. No fear, no urgency. Whoever had been here had already left.
They never came close. They stayed on the road. Thomas studied the footprints. The person had walked only a short distance before turning back, almost as if they had simply checked whether anyone else was there.
They were watching, Thomas nodded.
Maybe, but they didn't interfere. He looked toward the hidden hillside. If they knew about the entrance, they never tried to stop us, Lucien quietly added.
Or maybe they wanted us to find it. No one answered, because either explanation was possible.
The drive home passed much more quietly than the drive out. The notebook rested safely inside Thomas's backpack. Emily's letter remained tucked inside its envelope. The cassette recorder sat wrapped in one of Lily's towels to protect it. Even the silver key had been carefully placed inside a small cloth bag. Nothing had been left behind. Golden afternoon light filled the truck. Lily eventually leaned against the window. Half asleep, her backpack rested on her lap. Ethan smiled.
You carried all of that and still have energy to nap. Without opening her eyes, Lily answered.
Preparation is exhausting. Everyone laughed, even Thomas.
Back at the house, the familiar front porch somehow looked different. Not because it had changed, because they had. Thomas unlocked the front door. The house welcomed them with quiet warmth. Sunlight poured through the living room windows. Everything felt ordinary again. Wonderfully ordinary. Thomas carefully cleared the dining table, one by one. He laid out everything they had brought back. Victor's notebook, Emily's letter, the cassette, the silver key, the damaged photograph. No one spoke for several moments. Finally, Thomas looked toward Ava.
I spent years believing I had lost the last part of Emily. He gently touched the notebook. I was wrong. He looked around the table. She trusted that one day, someone would finish what she started. Lucien quietly shook his head.
I don't think she wanted anyone to finish it. Everyone looked toward him. Lucien smiled gently. I think she wanted people to continue it. Ava understood immediately.
Keep asking questions, Lucien nodded.
And keep choosing truth before fear, Thomas smiled.
Exactly.
Evening slowly settled outside. The sky turned shades of orange and purple. The first porch light flickered on. Lily quietly prepared tea for everyone. Ethan helped without being asked. Thomas noticed. He smiled to himself. Very quietly, very approvingly. Ava stepped onto the back porch carrying 2 mugs. Lucien followed a moment later. The creek reflected the fading sunset. Crickets had begun singing again. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ava handed him one of the mugs.
You've had a busy weekend, Lucien laughed softly.
That is one way to describe it. They stood side by side watching the trees.
Do you think Emily knew? Lucien looked toward the water.
About us? Ava nodded. Lucien smiled. I think she hoped. Ava looked at him. Hope doesn't require certainty. It only requires trust. The words stayed with her. Hope doesn't require certainty. She quietly repeated them to herself, almost like another promise.
Inside the house, Thomas carefully placed Emily's letter into a wooden keepsake box. For the first time in years, he locked the box, not because he wished to hide it, because he finally knew it would never be lost again. Outside, the stars slowly appeared above Moonlight Falls, one by one, just as they always had.